Hi, I'm Paige from Million Boo Handmade, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to do a magic ring or a chain 2, which is an alternative to a magic ring. So I'm going to be working in a Bernat Blanket yarn with a 6mm crochet hook. So first what we're going to do is we're going to find the end of our yarn. And to do a magic ring, this is the beginning of many different plushie patterns. Most plushies are worked in the round using some form of a magic ring. So for a magic ring, what you're going to do is hold your hand out and lay your yarn tail over your hand. You want the end of the yarn tail to be facing towards you, downwards. And then you're going to loop the working end of the yarn around 3 of your fingers and cross it over the yarn tail in a bit of an X shape. You can place your thumb there to hold it, and then I like to put the yarn back under my pinky finger there. Flip your hand over. You're going to insert your crochet hook under the yarn on the right and pull up the yarn on the left underneath. When you pull it up, you're going to twist. So now you have a bit of a twisted loop on your hook. And then you're going to slip your crochet hook back into the yarn on the left and pull that through your little loop that you made. This is what's going to secure your yarn onto your hook in your magic ring. So now that you have this magic ring, typically what we do is we will work a certain number of stitches into the magic ring, and that will be the base row of our plushie or whatever item you're using your magic ring for. So once you've made this magic ring, typically you'll go and do a single crochet, maybe usually about 6 to 8 single crochets depending on what the pattern calls for. So that's 1 single crochet into our magic ring. Often what I'll do is I will place a stitch marker into that first stitch just so that it's easy to locate once we close our magic ring. So that's our first single crochet into our magic ring. I'm going to do a second single crochet, a third single crochet, a fourth single crochet, a fifth single crochet, and a sixth single crochet. I'm just going to pull this so I don't lose that. So this is 6 single crochets into our magic ring. It's a little harder to see in the plush yarn, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to place another stitch marker in my last stitch. This just helps us identify where the beginning and the end of this is. Once we pull it tight, it's a little bit snug and it can be really hard to see. I like my tail to be underneath here. So we make sure that our working loop is big enough that it's not going to get lost while we're closing it. With Bernat Blanket yarn, it's not too bad about shedding. Other plush yarns can shed quite a bit and they can be a bit trickier, but I find Bernat Blanket is pretty forgiving when you're closing your magic ring. So you're going to hold on to your stitches like this and pull your yarn tail quite tight. And it's going to close that little hole. It doesn't have to be perfect yet, but this is kind of what it'll look like. And then you'll continue working in the round into the first stitch of this magic ring, and you'll work all the way around. And once you have a row or 2 done, that is when I would recommend weaving in your tail. You'll basically just go in through the stitches, weave it around, and tie a knot to finish it off. I'll show you what that will look like. So I'm just going to put my crochet hook back in. Now before I work this stitch, I am going to remove my marker because I have an eye on where it is. So I'm going to work my next row. I'm going to do 2 crochets into each stitch all the way around, 2 single crochets. Most plushy patterns typically have a round of increasing in every stitch for the second row, depending on what shape you're going for. Now my stitch marker here is indicating the last stitch that was from the first round, so I'm going to remove that, make sure I'm keeping an eye on where that stitch is, insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, do my second single crochet. And now I like to keep my stitch markers when I'm working in the round. I like to keep it on my last stitch. Some people prefer to keep it on their first stitch. You can do both if that's easier for you. This is just my preference. So now that I have my magic ring with 6 single crochet and then 12 single crochets, so I increased all the way around that second row, now I'm going to look at my yarn tail, and this is where we're going to weave it in, and I'll show you how to secure it to make sure that it does not come loose. So you're going to take your tapestry needle, thread that yarn tail into your needle, and now this can be a little bit difficult to see, especially with plush yarn, but you can kind of see where the stitches are. You don't have to be perfect with this, but I go in and I poke it through, stitch, find the next one. You can go through a couple at a time if you're able to pick them up. And as you weave through, pulls a little bit tighter. Now I'm going to poke it through this stitch here. This is where I'm going to tie my knot. So I'm going to pull through that stitch, I'm going to go back into that stitch again. And now I'm not going to pull it all the way. I have a little loop left, and that's where I'm going to put my needle through. I like to pull it really tight around my needle and then press my thumb and pull through, and you have a pretty secure knot there. You can, if you're concerned, go and do this one more time in any of those stitches. Pull it through, go through a second time, and then put your needle through that leftover loop, pull really tight, and pull it to knot. This part's going to be hidden inside of our plushie anyways, so it doesn't matter if it looks perfect. We just want it to be nice and secure. There we go. An alternative to doing a traditional magic ring is that you can do a chain 2 and work into the first chain of the chain 2. I find that this can be a little bit more beginner friendly. You have the benefit of not having to tie in or weave in and tie your ends. It can, in some yarns, make the hole at the beginning a little bit bigger. It's a little bit hard to tighten up. You can use your tail to weave that in, tighten it up a little bit, but I would recommend for beginners trying to do the chain 2 instead of the magic ring if you find that intimidating. So to do a chain 2 as an alternative to a magic ring, what you're going to do is you need to make a slip knot. So how I like to do that is I take my yarn in my right hand, I loop my yarn around my pointer finger until it's kind of like a ribbon cross thing. You're going to take your yarn tail and pull it underneath that loop and pull that through. Now once you have that done, you're going to insert your crochet hook and pull both ends to tighten it onto your crochet hook. You're going to do chain 1 and chain 2. So now you're going to have 2 chains, 1, 2. Now to do the magic ring, you're going to put your crochet hook inserted into the first chain and work your stitches that would be in your magic ring into that first chain stitch instead. So if we're doing 6 single crochets into a magic ring, we can chain 2, you can insert your hook into that first chain space, pull up a loop, there's your first single crochet, As I did before, I'm going to place a stitch marker into that first single crochet stitch so that I don't lose it. I'm going to do a second single crochet, a third single crochet, a fourth single crochet, a fifth single crochet, and a sixth single crochet. Again, I'm going to place a stitch marker in my last stitch. So here we have 6 single crochets into a chain 2, which is an alternative for using a magic ring. I find that with, like, this is Bernat Blanket yarn, and this is pretty forgiving doing it this way. You really don't have a huge hole, but if you're using something like a worsted weight yarn or a finer yarn, it sometimes can have that little hole that was from the chain, have quite a big gap. If you do find that that's happening, you can always leave a longer yarn tail and weave it around, similar to how we did with the traditional magic ring. For the most part though, I find that this is usually tight enough that I'm happy with it, and it's a little bit easier because you don't have to fuss with pulling closed your magic ring. You don't have to tie in your end. Can save a little bit of time and be a little bit more beginner friendly. You're going to work your stitches into this the same as you did with the traditional magic ring. So if you're doing round 2 of increase all the way around, so you're putting 12 stitches into your 6, it would look exactly the same. You can remove that stitch marker and go work into that first stitch. You're going to do 1, 2 single crochets into the first stitch, 2 single crochets into the second stitch, increase all the way around, until we get to our final stitch that has the stitch marker in it. I'm going to remove that, work our final 2 single crochets into there, and I'm going to pull this so that I don't lose it, remove my hook. I'm going to add my stitch marker back into that final stitch of this round. And there we go. We have done a chain 2 version of a magic ring, and then done an increase all the way around round as our second round. The tail is going to be what is the wrong side of your work, and this is the right side of your work. So as you continue working, this will be what shows up on the outside of your work, and this will be the inside of your work. Some people like to say it's the noodle goes in the bowl, so the tail is the noodle and it goes into the bowl as you create your plushie or your item around it. And yeah, so that's how to do a magic ring or a chain 2 alternative to a magic ring, and I hope you found this helpful.